we starting yet?
You do the intro.
Hold on, when she says now.
Alrighty, so welcome to this Socratic discussion about To Kill a Mockingbird. So our first question that was raised yesterday was, what is the cause of racism? So, who has any input on that? Who wants to start us off?
I will.
Kelsey?
I said that there are many different causes of racism from the past to present day. Racism is still happening today, whether you believe it's improving or not. I believe that racism causes many factors, none of which can be for sure known by me that they were really the cause. One cause could be that some people in history wanted to be superior in some way. They couldn't find any logical thing to make them superior, so they decided the color of their skin was more normal than that of blacks. They made it extremely widespread to the point where almost all whites were on board with the fact that they had the power over someone else without working for power. It is believed by some that the first people on Earth were white, so that makes them normal compared to people of color. This would also be a reason for racism to be created, making people think that they have superiority because that's what makes them happy.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Kelsey is saying. I also said it can be passed on from family or taught by someone else, but it really started with the colonizers and slavery. White people then treated black people like animals and property, and that they were far better than them.
Right, because I think with racism, it mainly develops and it shows how we operate as a society. That's how we sort of create those social groups. Because racism can sprout from us taking on views from others around us, hanging around people that views align with ours, being quick to judge others, or just blatantly blaming others for our problems.
I agree with Andrew because I believe that racism started, or didn't start, but kind of developed by young people listening and getting their ideas from older influences in their life, and they cause them to have racist views in their life.
I agree with that because the children as kids would never believe something like that on their own. It's always people of like higher generations.
Yeah, and then something kind of like that, like you guys said, it really can be influenced by many people. So those older generations probably had a higher influence that would give them those ideas, and they just jumped onto that and kept listening and really felt it.
What do you have to say, Brooklyn?
I say, so I agree with Vicky and just everyone. And like, if they're like used to being around one race and they see a new race, they're like, oh, that's not right.
No, I think I believe everyone because it's everyone just like follows everyone else, so it's just.
But what do you have to say about this?
Pretty much, I think that just like everyone else said, the younger generation, whenever they see something like on the news or anything, if they hear their parents repeatedly say something, they believe that that's the right way, and then they keep growing up with that. So then, eventually, when they grow up, if they keep hearing that, then they're just going to start doing that and showing other people that they think that that's the right way because that's what they've been taught.
Right, because, some people say that you were born racist, but that's completely untrue. Because the people we become is greatly influenced by the people we put ourselves around and the people we are around, like our parents. So, like I said before, if we put ourselves around people who have racist or prejudiced views, scientifically speaking, it is more likely that you will also take on those views rather than abandon them. So this is especially true for children who always listen to everyone and everything, especially their parents. So if their parents have racist views, then they will learn and take on those views as well. So that's why we have to be sure that what is being taught is lifted to our standards of wanting to be a racist-free society.
And that was kind of shown in the book too, because Atticus, he was not racist or prejudiced, and he taught his kids good morals and stuff, but everyone else's parents were racist and prejudiced, and their kids turned out the same way.
Yeah, it definitely depends on perspective and other influences.
Yeah, and also, with Mayella and her father, of course, was very racist because he tried blaming his abuse on Tom Robinson when, even though everyone else knew that he was not guilty, but Mayella still stood her ground and tried not to be biased towards one person.
Exactly, and in that case, he used his white power for that because he knew that people were going to believe him over a black man.
What do you have to say, Miranda?
I agree with everyone.
Do you have any other evidence, like examples?
Could you think of any just from the book?
just think, like when we created our social groups, especially from the slave trade that our country engaged in, that really led to one group thinking that they were better than the other, because it's completely normal that we want to spend time with people whose interests are the same as ours, because it creates a feeling of belonging that is so important to our everyday lives. But in this particular case, the white people legally held power over the black people, which is why there's division between the two groups. The slaves weren't friends with their slave owners. Both sides had a distaste for one another, and over time that evolved into the racism prevalent in today's world. And that also leads us to being quick to judge people and label people, and blaming them for our problems when things don't go our way.
Yeah, it's pretty much all about how some people want to be superior to another.
And who you choose to surround yourself with. And if you want to believe everything that everybody tells you, if you want to go and do your own research, because I feel like forming your own opinion about things is the best option.
It's very important.
So I guess that really leads us into our next question of perspective. How do perspectives change the way other people think? Nate, what do you have to say on that?
Well, I think that if one person would see something that maybe they saw and thought it was something bad happening, maybe if they were, say, 5 feet to the left, they might have saw a perspective that just saw something happening that wasn't really bad at all. But they might have went and spread a rumor that something bad happened or whatever, even though it really never did, just because they saw that. But if they were really right over a little bit to the left or right, they might have saw that it wasn't bad.
Yeah, and it's pretty much just where we stand on the situation, because just like in the evidence from the book, when Tom Robinson allegedly raped Mayella, but Tom knew that it definitely was not his fault, but everyone else just saw it from the one way, and they thought that he was guilty, of course, and then it ended up that no one saw from his point of view, and he actually did not do anything wrong.
Right, because I think like with perspective, it can do like one of three things. It can provide an alternative rebuttal to your initial thinking, which causes you to rethink your own perspective. It can be peer pressured on you, where it's forced on you because everyone else is doing it, so you should do it too. Or it makes you realize something deeper that was not previously known, which makes you stand even more firmly in your current views and opinions.
Mm-hmm. And I also think that having someone who's been in those difficult situations and like having them close in your life, or being able to experience like just being near somebody who would face racism, and like seeing how people treat them would also really help, because it's kind of like stepping in someone's shoes and seeing things that you would have never seen before in your normal life, because you're really sheltered, and you realize that other people like that face those decisions or in those situations.
Yeah, sometimes perspective against you can be like a good thing, because like at school, if there wasn't a bell, someone directs the bell and says when the bell rings, when you should leave class. If there wasn't a bell, we would all be, doing whatever we wanted. And it's all really based on superior power over us, what people think is right for us. So then that's what we do.
And like with what Vicky said about being sheltered, that's almost exactly what it was like in To Kill a Mockingbird, because Jim and Scout were mildly sheltered, to say the least, because their perspective on life was that of what their father had taught them. Treat everyone with the utmost kindness and respect, even those who do not look or think like you. So then when they were presented with the atrocity of an unfair racist jury that ultimately convicted Tom Robinson, this made Scout and Jim realize that not everyone was as good in kindness as they initially thought. So that led them to planting themselves even more into the idea of treating everyone fairly and equally, so it makes it well known to us that they would not do the same thing if they were on that jury.
No, yeah, and I feel like them having Calpurnia. Okay, I feel like them having Calpurnia in their life to just like take them, like say when they went to the black church, they like experienced a situation like that on their own, and like just having her in general, like they respect her so much. So when they see people treat her bad, it makes them realize how bad their community really is.
And like what Andrew said on peer pressure, if someone says, if your friends are jumping off a bridge, would you too? That doesn't like pertain to anything really, because you're gonna be like, no, I of course want to do that. But then there's other situations where there's little decisions to be made, and that's where peer pressure really comes in. And you base it off of what you want, but you also base it off of the perspectives of other people and what they're going to think about you.
Right. And it's also because us being humans, we want to create that sense of belonging and being a part of something. Because that's something we value a lot in our society. What do you have to say, Carly?
Like going back for like what Vicky said, going into different people's shoes. Like Scout, when she was in different shoes, like she found what like other people were like thinking and what their perspectives on what different things.
And like connecting it to real life, if you have a friend that's like obviously facing literally anything at home, if they're just different than standard person, and you get to see how their life is like, you will sympathize with that group and you will know how it feels like. So you basically change your perspective and you know how to treat people.
Anything else to add from anybody? All right, so the next thing that we decided to talk about is how do money and power affect dynamics and how kids are raised. Miranda, do you mind taking us away with that?
I can kind of go. I feel like if you have more money and power, you want to fit in this social hierarchy. And if that means it's like a standard thing. So if people say, well, you have this much money, you have this much power, why are you talking down to them? You know what I mean? It's just, again, how people see you and how you want to belong. So you want to do everything right.
Yeah, normally people with more power have more money. That's not always the case, but it happens a lot. And that's when their kids get more of what they want because they have more money to help them off of that. And they want their kids to be happy. So then that's where they start to become more greedy, selfish, and less thankful. And then that's where normally, like in the book, it talked about how Tom Robinson was really kind to Mayella. That's because of the life he grew up with. And he learned to be thankful for the smaller things that he got.
Yeah, and the kids that get mostly what they want, the parents that have more money to just get their kids whatever they want, and they never get told no. So when they end up going out into the real world, and then someone tells them no, then they will get extremely mad, and then they will try and use money to get whatever they want and then build up. And also, kids who grow up in less rich homes are better at saving, and they're more likely to get a more efficient job rather than their dream job.
Going off of what Kelsey said, Tom Robinson, he grew up humble, and then when he thought to help others see that kindness, and he tried to help, say, Mayella, but that got him in trouble because Mayella didn't see that. She saw it as help, but she saw it as too much help. She wanted more from him, even though he was just trying to be kind and help.
Right, and I think with more money comes more power. And then when you have more power, all you want to chase is getting more power. So it just becomes that line of, I don't know what you would say, greediness per se.
No, yeah, even without the money, you can still have power. Like how Mayella and the Ewells had power over Tom Robinson. They were able to, persuade everyone because they knew that they're white and he's black and they have power over him, so they can make up any story they would like, and the jury would always choose them over him.
Yeah, and even though they didn't have maybe more money than anybody else, they still had more money over the superior group that they were trying to take over, and they knew that they had more power than them, so they would just target them to make themselves feel higher.
Because once again, once you have power, all you want is more power. You don't stop and say, I don't want to go any further. No. Humans have a natural capacity to want to feel important, to want to feel in control of things. So once you have power, you want to keep going with it. You want to advance it.
Yeah, the power just goes to some people's heads sometimes. And, like,
Same with the money. always gets into my head. The more money you have, the more.
And sometimes, like with the kids too, that opinion doesn't always take hold with them because, for example, like in To Kill a Mockingbird, we see Atticus, for example. This was during in the Deep South during the 1930s, which was the Great Depression. So that meant not a lot of people had that much money. But Atticus was a well-known lawyer and lawmaker. Oh. I found my spot now. He had the advantage of getting paid more than the average person, meaning that he possessed more power and money than the average person. So he didn't try to achieve more of that power so that he could do whatever he wanted to do. He used his power to try to bring about equality and kindness into the hearts of all prejudiced men. So just by taking the case of Tom Robinson showed that very fact. And that's why Scout and Jem and everyone else, which is why Scout and Jem expected everyone else to be the same way.
No, yeah, and I feel like Atticus is like that solely because he values more like morals and stuff like that instead of power. It's really just based on your values and your morals.
And he probably grew up in a family with less money. That's most likely. That could be why he was kind of things.
Very good. Oh, I love the discussion. Outside circle, what are the good things that the inside circle did today on this first discussion? Everything? Like what? Be specific.
I like how they took the topic that was first started and they developed it into To Kill a Mockingbird. They showed their claims and they based their solid opinions off of those claims.
Yes. Yeah. Very good claim development. Good. What else?
That was kept the conversation going.
Yeah, the conversation was connected the whole time. Yeah.
You're right. Connecting real world things with the book.
Yes. The main goal of our discussion, connecting what we're reading to what we're living. Yeah. Good. Did you hear them all, even with our masks and everything?
Yeah, I think they're thought it very well.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we're all getting used to them and everything. All right, what are some things outside circle that you will want to improve on or make sure that you do as well in your discussion when you come in?
Slow down when you're talking.
Okay, slow down when you're talking.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's
Beginning
natural.
one did.
It's natural. I'm sorry.
Okay, and we didn't get through all of our questions, which is fine. So, do you have to start in order, the outside circle that's coming in?
No.
Nope.
I know that they should start with maybe the flowiest kind of question instead of something that doesn't walk up you for instance, what is the cause of racism? You can go so many different ways with that.
Okay, so that this is your conversation. So very quickly and quietly, switch places. The new outside circle, make sure you know if you are a content summarizer, a discussion connector, or an evidence check. Oh. I don't have to remember you.
I have it in my notes.
Oh, and that's hard.
I have it in my notes.
Oh, is it? Awesome.
What's
Great job.
Why did I bring this?
All right. Are we ready?
Not yet. You just did our literacy journal, right?
Yes, go ahead and get into your literacy journal for the outside circle.
What do we name
So
it?
Socratic discussion tracking.
No idea. Start wherever.
How do you get new ones again? Never mind, I have one.
You can go to,
17 to this one?
actually go to insert.
So this thing,
Okay, right.
what's
Insert.
it
What's
called?
You're starting. Okay.
What is it, leadership?
Okay.
All right, are we ready?
Not yet, not yet. Not yet?
Not quite yet. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Okay.
All right. You may begin.
Okay. So, I don't know what to say. Somebody else.
So our first question is, what is the cause of racism? And I feel that can go many ways. If somebody wants to start us off on what they feel the cause is.
I feel that the white people felt most intimidated by the black people, and that's why they needed to prove that in some way, so they judged them by the color of their skin, just to prove that they are higher and more mighty than the black people.
I agree with Lance's idea because I feel like racism is a feeling of like knowing that people are different and discriminating because of it. Because somebody had to have power, and the whites decided that it would be the color of their skin, and they wanted to be in power, so they thought that blacks were like lesser than them.
Yeah. I agree. But like adults put that idea into their kids' mind, and then that's just how they grow up, and
Yeah.
that's what they think for the rest of their life.
Building off of that, racism, you're not born with racist thoughts. It's the influence people have on you that makes you think, that makes you believe the things that they believe and see it in the way that they believe. And if everybody sees it in this way, then that's how racism keeps going, because it's not like one person different opinion is going to change a whole group's people's opinions. And yeah, that's
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel that racism is a cause of ignorance. People were taught and didn't acknowledge and understand they weren't taught and don't acknowledge people by what their thoughts are. They acknowledge them by the color of their skin. And families and groups of people have just been taught that this ignorance is okay and they have been taught how to treat people without respect when they should be taught something else.
like, for example, like in To Kill a Mockingbird, Mr. Raymond, Dolphus Raymond, he is a white man who lives with a black mistress and mixed children, and he pretends to be drunk just to give the citizens of Maycomb an explanation for his behavior, when in reality he's simply just jaded by the hypocrisies of white society and prefers living among blacks. And like, he's not fazed by the opinions other people give on his lifestyle. However, people influence others to see the situation in a similar way, and that's how racism spreads and continues, just because everybody just influences everyone else to see it in their way instead of expressing their own opinions.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like somebody sees somebody not treating blacks the same, and they think that that's like how everybody should act, and they have to fit in.
I think that like in the book, Cecile and Francis are taught to be racist by their families because they've always been taught this way. They don't see a problem with it. They know that blacks are different, and so they're disrespectful to them because of it, and they've never been like in their shoes, so they don't know how they're really being wrong to them.
One thing I noticed in the book is that Atticus is someone who is very smart and intelligent. He's an attorney, and he shows to Jem and Scout that you need to learn and be into other people's shoes. But Bob Ewell, he is a drunk and happens to be racist. It happens with the education that you have as well, I feel, and that the way you have been brought up as either as a part of a drunken family or as an educated family, I feel like that has a major difference in the way that you think.
Yeah, can you connect to that?
Yeah. I mean, Atticus wasn't racist, making his children. He definitely taught his children that everyone was equal and that it didn't matter what the color of their skin was, and that it didn't matter as long as they were just people and you had respect for others.
Casey, do you have anything to say about this?
I agree with them, but I also think that sometimes it's just like your own opinions instead of the opinions, because like sister had a really different opinion on like things and everything than Atticus did.
That's a very interesting point to bring up. Like, you can be raised in the exact same household and have completely opposite opinions of the person that you're living with. And I think it's all just who you choose to like see as your idols and like how you want to think and stuff like that.
Yeah, it like depends on how headstrong you are. I see what you mean, because like it just depends on who you want to believe and who you want to like follow, really. Elizabeth, do you connect to that in any way?
Well, I appreciated in To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus had a strong moral background and taught his children to treat everyone with respect, no matter what their race was.
Yeah, and using that, Atticus taught his kids to see things from other people's point of view, and that brings us to our next question of how do perspectives of people change the way other people think?
I agree with that, and Scout really did look up to Atticus, and she quoted things that he had said previous times, like when he said that cheating a white man, colored man is 10 times worse than cheating a white man.
So you think that like since Atticus was influencing Scout because she obviously looked up to him, that she decided to like follow in his footsteps and be like that?
Yeah.
Hayden?
A connection to perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, I think perspective, depending on who it is in relation to other people, like who looks up to your perspective and cause them to also follow your perspective and take you as a role model, or what you say is fact in some cases.
Yeah, I agree. I basically said that. It's just whoever you look up to, like that's the opinion you go after. So if you look up to your parents, you're gonna think that their opinion's right.
Yeah, my idea is similar to yours because like I think the easiest way for people to gain an opinion on something is to develop similar ideas as someone who shares their opinion on the topic openly, and like what people have been through or how they were raised influences the way that they think or the way that they act.
Lance?
Yeah, I agree with that. So I feel like the ideas of other people influence us in our own ways because you take it in your own way. This means that you can hear something and think about it in your own perspective and change the way you see something rather than seeing it in the way that it was presented.
Yeah, and like for example, in To Kill a Mockingbird, from Boo's perspective, he's just a socially awkward, shy man who hasn't been allowed to leave his house in years. And to Scout, he's a mysterious, spooky, unknown person. But this was until she was able to actually talk to and see Boo in person. And by doing all these things, she was able to see things from his perspective and quit pestering him because she understood more why he was like that.
I agree with that, and also when she was on the step, she saw it through. She was in his shoes, and she saw when they took the things out of the tree. She thought that they didn't give him anything back, but then she realized that through his eyes, they did give him something back, a joy that was watching them do what they did.
Yeah, I think Scout really challenged a lot of people's perspectives on things. Like in the book, Uncle Jack punished Scout for punching Frances because he thought that she was being ill-tempered. But really, what happened was he was being disrespectful to her father, and when she finally explained that to him, then he finally had a new perspective on why she did what she did.
Megan, what do you think?
Yeah, and to add on to that, I feel like Atticus gave the children a perspective of someone who isn't judgmental in his values and shows his values and morals. He applies his values to everybody. He doesn't just pick and choose when they're important.
Yeah, I agree. Casey, what do you think so?
Atticus was always calm. He never really went into a temper about anything that much.
He was like the same outside of his house as he was inside of it. And I think the kids like really looked up to him for that.
just overall that perspectives influence the way people see the world and how, like, what their values are, and it can cause division and devotion, I guess.
Definitely, they can cause division, and like I've seen it this year since it was an election year, how people have been extremely like open about their political views, and the people around you can definitely influence your views on it. Like I can't even vote, and I didn't do any research on the candidates or anything, but I've listened to like my parents' ideas on the candidates and like why they like who they liked, and like I would vote in the same way as my parents just because that's the only like opinion that I've heard on it, and I think that that's just an example of exactly like how parents just have so much influence on how they face things, or how people have so much influence on how the people around them think.
Yeah, I really agree with that. Like, the more you hear a certain opinion, the more you're gonna agree with it.
Next question. How does money and power affect family dynamics and how kids are raised? Kind of related to that as well. What do you think?
So, I think that the more money and power that you have, the more likely kids will get more schooling and like better opportunities.
If you are enrolled in CNA class next term, you need to report to nurse Leslie's room at this time. Again, if you're taking CNA next term, you need to report to nurse Leslie's room right now.
Because just like if you have more money, you're able to buy things that people with less money won't necessarily be able to buy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I said, I feel that this can all depend on what impact the money has on the parents. I say this because the parents are only worried about the money, and they don't spend any time with the kids, and they will probably care about money too much, and then get obsessed with that, and then the kids won't have like any feelings about what they want to do or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I basically said that the more money that the family has, the more greedy the kids will become. Like, they think they can just have everything that they want.
I agree with that, and I just think money is a social construct, and the more money equals higher power in the eyes of people. People with money tend to have more advantages and don't sympathize as much because they don't realize that other people don't have their advantages that they have. And I feel like they don't realize that other people don't get as many opportunities.
Yeah, because like Scout and Jem in the book, since they're white, they had like better schooling and they didn't have to worry about people being racist to them. But Calpurnia and her son are black, and like all the people in her church, barely any of them knew how to read because they didn't have the opportunities to do that. Elizabeth, what do you think about this?
I agree with the point you made about the difference in education of the people.
I agree with that as well, and also as well what Isabel said. And in Calpurnia's church, though they weren't exactly rich, they were kind of poor. They did give what they had toward the church and bettering the community.
Like in To Kill a Mockingbird, the Yules were considered probably like the second lowest family on the social hierarchy above like the African Americans. They were filthy and poor, and their father was a drunk, and they were still considered something above somebody else. But this was not a good family, and there were many problems compared to Atticus's family, who was financially stable and enjoys family events and overall just a good family. And the way that the kids were raised goes back to those families and how the poor, filthy family raised their kids to be manipulative and use their power over somebody else. And Atticus's family was educated and Atticus's kids were raised to be morally correct and just a better family overall.
So do you think there's a reason that the Yules were like filthy and stuff? Like, could Bob Yule have changed his ways?
I think it was definitely a thing because in the book it said that Atticus thought, and most people knew, that Bob Yule drank the paycheck, meaning that he bought alcohol instead of buying amenities, making it so they scrounged in the dump for basic things that they wanted or needed.
And to go off of that, and what Isabel said, in To Kill a Mockingbird, it said that it had the drinking had been going on for 3 generations. So it had been going on for 3 generations. So clearly, it has been passed through family, and you were taught that you drink as you get older.
Lance, you have anything to say?
I agree with Wesley's point about a lot. I said in the beginning of the story, Horace Yule shows up to school with mud and lice in his hair, and he is snotty and rude to everyone. This means that he is poor. He probably didn't have anyone to show him how to act polite with people because he was mean to everyone. He didn't really have a mentor because his dad was out drinking all the time.
It all just depends on how you grow up, like what your family's like. That's just
Like your family's values.
So you both each round ended kind of with your family's values. Oh, interesting. I love it. Oh, you guys did so well. Outside circle, celebrate what the inside circle did. What did they do well? Yep, conversation kept going. Good. Kelsey.
Really good about connecting their statements.
Yep, good connections. Nate?
They did really well on including others in the conversation.
Good.
They asked a lot of questions and added off of them.
Yeah, good. New challenging questions, and that is where we dig deeper and get a bigger, deeper collective understanding. Good. Well,
They kept clarifying to make sure everyone knew what everyone else was saying.
yeah, and that is so important, clarifying so that we know we're tracking, all of us, in our comprehension and that we're going in the same direction or that we understand where we're going. Yeah, Andrew?
They not only connected their problems that were stated on the Socratic Discussion sheet to Kill a Mockingbird, but also in the real world and life as we know it.
Yes. Awesome. Oh, guys, I'm so proud of you. Wonderful job. What I want you to do now, very quickly go to your reflection and your rubric. I want you to look at your rubric first, highlight with a different color the skills that you say, oh yeah, I did that. And maybe it was one you used a skill that you weren't even consciously going to try to use, but you've done it now. So highlight in a different color the ones that you actually ended up using, and then complete your reflection. Awesome job, guys. Thanks.
My computer did not work.